Joining us now, Mark Dubowitz. He's the Executive Director of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, and Peter Brooks, Senior Fellow for National Security Affairs at the Heritage Foundation and former member of the CIA. Mark, first to you, what's the major difference between these two gentlemen and how they will engage Iran in the future?
Well, I think there's two fundamental differences. One is that Governor Romney has made it very clear that he will not allow Iran to develop nuclear weapons capacity. The president believes that he can catch Iran if they try to sneak out or break out, and he believes that the intelligence community, which missed a Chinese nuke, a Russian nuke, and nukes from Pakistan, India, and North Korea, they're going to get it right this time. I think the second fundamental difference is the relationship with the Israeli Prime Minister. There's clearly daylight between the Obama administration and the Israeli Prime Minister, and I think that daylight is being recognized in Tehran, that is not terrified by this administration, and the government in Jerusalem is not reassured by it.
Peter, respond a little bit to what Mark just said about the intelligence community, because we've talked about the intelligence community over the last couple of weeks, specifically with Libya, right? The administration's been critical of the information they've received from that community. How good is our intelligence in Iran? Is the president correct that we will know when that point of no return is actually hit?
Look, Jenna, we have the world's best intelligence services, but once again, they're often working with imperfect knowledge. In some ways, it's like, putting together a jigsaw puzzle, but you don't know what the box looks like, what the real end goal is, the picture is. You may not have all the pieces, you may have other pieces. And so it's really, really difficult work. And Iran is a very, very difficult target. They have, they're doing their best, but I cannot put full confidence in the president's statement that he will know, that we will know when Iran is at that point. So I'm very, very concerned, and I'm worried that his belief in that will lead us astray in terms of dealing with Iran's nuclear program.
So how so?
Well, I'm just worried that he's going to think that we have it right. There are a lot of things that are involved in these programs that we just don't know. We don't have full visibility on the Iranian nuclear program. Even our spies don't. But like I said, we're working with imperfect knowledge. We will continue to work with imperfect knowledge upon which policy needs to be built. The problem is that if we don't have perfect knowledge, perfect visibility, transparency about their program, how can we make these sort of decisions? Iran could get outside assistance, for instance. Where we may be basing it on certain things that we know, and things may change a little bit and accelerate Iran. We've seen this in the past. We saw this with North Korea's long-range missile program in the late 1990s. The intelligence community thought it would take years for them to get to a certain point, and then all of a sudden we were surprised by that. So despite the great job that our intelligence community does, we do not have perfect knowledge on these very, very hard targets.
Mark, one of the things that the president said is that Mitt Romney was repeating some of his policies when it came to Iran and when it came to so many parts of the world. And he said, you're saying the same thing I'm saying, but you're only saying it louder. Mark, a quick thought from you. Does delivery matter? Perception matter, even if the message is the same?
Look, economic pressure, political pressure is as much about psychology as it is about legalities. And the fact of the matter is that these sanctions have been tough, they've been severe, but we are a long way from a economic cripple date. The economic cripple date comes long after the nuclear threshold date, and we have not struck fear in the hearts of the men who rule Iran. These are hardcore, dedicated revolutionaries who are committed to developing nuclear weapons.
Mark, would you hold that thought for a second? Because we have some great sound from both the president and Mitt Romney specifically on sanctions. I'm going to take a quick commercial break. We'll play that sound for our viewers, and we'll get into it a little bit more. We'll be right back. Back now with Mark Dubowitz and Peter Brooks talking a little bit more about Iran and the debate. We throw around this word sanctions like everybody knows what it's all about, gentlemen. And the key for these sanctions, the goal is to stop a nuclear weapon in Iran and therefore stop war. Here is what both candidates had to say about the sanctions last night.
We then organized the strongest coalition and the strongest sanctions against Iran in history, and it is crippling their economy. Their currency has dropped 80%. Their oil production has plunged to the lowest level since they were fighting a war with Iraq 20 years ago. So their economy is in a shambles. And the reason we did this is because a nuclear Iran is a threat to our national security, and it's a threat to Israel's national security. We cannot afford to have a nuclear arms race in the most volatile region of the world.
I would tighten those sanctions. I would say that ships that carry Iranian oil can't come into our ports. I imagine the EU would agree with us as well. Not only ships couldn't, I'd say companies that are moving their oil can't, people who are trading in their oil can't. I would tighten those sanctions further. Secondly, I'd take on diplomatic isolation efforts. I'd make sure that Ahmadinejad is indicted under the Genocide Convention. His words amount to genocide incitation. I would indict him for it. I would also make sure that their diplomats are treated like the pariah they are around the world, the same way we treated the apartheid diplomats of South Africa.
Mark, pick up off the point you were making just before the break, that really we haven't changed the path quite yet. What about the path forward?
Well, you know, President Obama talks about crippling the Iranian economy because of a drop in currency and a drop in oil sales. But what he's not talking about is how big are Iran's foreign exchange reserves, how long will they last, and when do they actually run out? I mean, that is the key and principal weapon that the Iranians have to forestall economic collapse. So President Obama, I hope, has some economic model that actually shows all of this. He clearly hasn't shown it to Congress. He hasn't shown it to our allies. And he hasn't shared it with the Iranian people or the American people. So we really need to know how far are they from economic collapse, and will economic collapse break the nuclear will of Iran's supreme leader, who, by the way, is the gentleman who should be incited on crimes of genocide or incitement to genocide. Ahmadinejad is a lame duck. He's irrelevant. It is the supreme leader who holds supreme power, and he is the man who should be indicted for incitement to genocide.
Peter, your thoughts?
Well, first of all, Iran is more isolated. It has greater economic sanctions than ever before, but it's also irrelevant because, as Mark mentioned, it hasn't changed the atomic aspirations of the Islamic Republic of Isotopes, Iran. The fact of the matter is that you have to remember that endless rounds of diplomacy and tough economic sanctions didn't prevent North Korea or Pakistan from joining the once exclusive nuclear club as its 8th and 9th members. So if Iran really wants to become a nuclear weapon state, and it's a game changer for them, and it's a game changer for us, they'll be willing to endure the pain that it takes to cross that nuclear threshold.
Certainly more to talk about on this topic, gentlemen. We look forward to having you back as always. Thank you for the time today.
Thanks, Jenna.
Thank you.